Tell me a little bit about Jamaica.
I went to quite a few different schools.
You're a bad boy in Jamaica?
Miss Barrett, rallied her troops, which were the prefects. And she, amassed a plan. And I heard behind me, she goes, "So, Mr. Sangster, was it worth it?" I had an amazing job running the 3 largest airlines in the world for Panasonic. And then lo and behold, COVID came.
Your grandfather was the former Prime Minister of Jamaica, Sir Donald Sangster. Tell us about the history of your family as you remember it. Hi, and welcome to the first in a series of podcasts called
Global Solutions with Naomi Francis.
I think stories are so important to tell, especially stories of success. And today for our inaugural recording, I have a gentleman that I really truly admire from the crown of his head to the sole of his feet. He is one of those who literally get things done. He's a man of his word. He is a successful businessman as well, a Jamaican living in the diaspora who has, been able to move and shake, as they say. Please help me welcome everybody, Mr. Bindley Sangster II. Bindley, walk on.
Well, thank you for having me, Nems. And, the feeling is mutual. I'm so proud of you. And, to see you take something that you're so passionate about and take it from a vision to execution is really where the rubber hits the road, and I'm so proud of you. So it is my honor, my privilege to be here today, to be a part of something that I know is going to be very successful and is going to bring value to so many near and far, not just here, in the diaspora, but, back home where, so many people look up to you and they realize that, dreams can become reality. You are a living example of that, and so many people look up to you. And I think this is going to be one of those tools that you use to bring so much value to so many people. So again, I'm proud of you. Congratulations. And it is my honor to be here.
Don't do that. Not so early. You know that I'm not good with these kind of accolades, but thank you. It warms my heart. When I moved to Atlanta, you were one of the first you were the first to welcome me. And I said, there's no way I could do a podcast without, starting with you first, because you really are the foundation for being here. Firstly, I must say that, just being away from Jamaica and being in a new space opens your eyes up to so many things. There are stories of people who love Jamaica, want to be in Jamaica, but also who have a home in the diaspora. And I wanted to tell the stories, especially of those in Atlanta, because I think Atlanta is a fantastic place to be. You've made Atlanta home for how long?
21 years now.
21 years. How was it moving from Jamaica, the Jamaican space, as an immigrant, then coming into Atlanta?
Well, my story is a little different, so I didn't, come directly to Atlanta. I got to Atlanta through, so many different other moves. I left Jamaica and I joined the United States military.
Thank you for your service.
Pleasure. And that then afforded me the opportunity to travel significantly. To date, I think I've been to 83 countries.
Wow.
And, so I got to Atlanta through a multitude of, different locations under different circumstances. But I, was forced to move to Atlanta because we were in South Florida in 2005. Mm-hmm. And if any one of your, audiences remember, 2005, South Florida was hit by a barrage of hurricanes. At that time, I was working for the Carlyle Group, and I was always remote parts of the world, Central Africa, Northern China, deep South America. And, I was just my wife and child at home in South Florida. And, one of the preemptive things, preparing for hurricanes was always have somebody to put up the shutters, make sure that the generator is gassed, there's enough food in the house,
Pretty much what we experience in Jamaica every single year, right?
You know, that typical board up the windows, make sure everything is, ready. And it was hard because I was always, some of the places that I was at, it took, a week because they only had, weekly flights. So enough was enough. 2005 showed me that South Florida was not somewhere that I wanted to leave my family to, especially being on the road as often as I was. My sister had been living in Atlanta, and you want to surround yourself with family, have, a network. And so I realized that at that time I couldn't work anywhere or live anywhere that the three major airlines flew out of: American, United, and Delta. Atlanta, Hartsfield Jackson being, the busiest airport in the world and the hub for Delta, as well as having, scheduled flights for American and United. My sister being here, it really kind of stacked the deck on my options. So we moved to Atlanta, and the fact that it was landlocked, it didn't really have as much natural disaster as South Florida did, made it a easy choice.
And the weather's always great here.
Relatively. So yeah, I don't like the cold.
Yes.
So there are places here in the States that a lot of people in the diaspora know gets a lot colder than Atlanta.
Yes.
So, but no, I mean, making Atlanta home, where I live, is, has been named the number one, city suburb in America.
That's because you're there.
No. But again, you're very fortunate to have access to great schools, great infrastructure, have access to the busiest airport. And, for people in business who travel a lot, being able to connect to some of these, key cities and key countries is critical. So I think you know a little bit about that now.
Only a little bit. So let me go a little bit to, you know what? No, let me not go there yet. I want to definitely hear about your time in the Air Force, the Armed Services, right? But before that, let's go back to Jamaica, because this is a podcast that will help Jamaicans, both at home and in the diaspora, realize what you can do when you dream big. So tell me a little bit about Jamaica. Hold on now. Do not tell me that you're part of the Monroe Club, and that, no, please don't, because you Monroe, you can't do that.
Bubba for life.
Jesus.
But again, you see, my path was not the typical path. I have a network in Jamaica that I would like to say is rather unique, because some people say, because I went to quite a few different schools.
You're a bad boy in Jamaica?
No, you see, that's where clarification is critical.
Absolutely.
I wanted to understand what the offerings were in the different educational institutions in Jamaica. So, I had to do a random sampling of each one. So,
of your own volition.
Yes, exactly. So I wanted to see what town life, in school was like. I wanted to see what country life was like. So, I got a chance to build. So, we probably will delve into a little bit more about Jamaica, where it's doing from, a economical standpoint, and we'll touch on some of the key people who I feel have brought significant value to Jamaica. But I'm proud to say that I went to school with quite a few of these, right? Namely, our past Minister of Finance, Nigel Clark.
You were at Monroe with Nigel Clark.
Yes,
All right.
known as Judge, when we were kids.
Okay.
Jeffrey Hall,
Is it?
At Campion.
Oh, you were at Campion as well?
Yes.
Right. You had the country and the town lands. Okay. So you were at Campion too.
I went to Hillel, I went to Monroe, I went to Campion, I went to Priory. So I got to sample quite a few different environments, but I think I definitely took away positives from each one. And as we've seen, relationships, which are, as you have come to know, relationships are key, especially in a small, environment like Jamaica, that, it's about who you know.
Would you say that you came from a privileged background? I mean, you mentioned Monroe, Campion, Hillel, Priory. Those aren't schools that, people from not so privileged backgrounds end up.
Well, a lot of people are going to hopefully watch this, and everything that is shared can be verified. I did not grow up, so did I grow up with, as you would say in Jamaica, upper St. Andrew crowd? Yes, I did. But I never was afforded the same opportunities that a lot of my peers were afforded. My mother passed away when I was young. I was 8 years old. And that kind of caused a ripple effect that, again, I wouldn't change anything in the story. Who I am today, I'm very proud of. I'm proud of the husband that I am. I'm proud of the father that I am. I will tell you that there are three things that I know I do really, really well. I grow coffee really well. At one point in time, I could fix any aircraft, in the world really, really well. And I know that I'm a really good father. Everything else, I'm a work in progress. I can always be a better husband. I can always be a better son. I can always be a better friend. And I can always be a better, co-worker, because I don't ever say that people work for me. We always work together. So, I went through, as you say, we give people in Jamaica labels, and maybe one of the labels that I would have been given was bad boy or troublemaker, or, but I wasn't there. But for those who knew Campion and knew our Dean of Discipline, Miss Barrett, it was brought to my attention at her send-off, at her farewell. A question was asked by some of the past students to Miss Barrett. She was, Miss Barrett, in your tenure, in your time at Campion, were there ever any students that stood out to you, either from a negative or a positive standpoint? And I heard that she paused and she sat back and she cracked a smile and she goes, yes, there are students that come across that last with you, and they're like, so who was that? She goes, one that stood out was Bindley Sangster. And they were like, oh, because he gave so much trouble? She goes, some people could have, taken it as trouble, but he was good mischief, right? Because I never hurt anybody. I never did anything maliciously to cause anybody ill. But obviously the trouble that, they identified was what she considered good mischief.
You notice I'm sitting with my chair because I'm trying to figure out now what was one of those memorable, mischief sessions that you got into.
Well,
that is PG, that can be shared, right?
The most famous one to date was during World Cup. And
that would have been 94? No, 98. 98 World Cup?
This was way before then.
Oh, okay. We're not talking about when Jamaica qualified.
1990.
Ah, okay.
Mm-hmm. And it's, kind of fortuitous that, we got World Cup, upon us here in Atlanta, right?
Yes.
Been well immersed in that, especially in your current role.
Yes.
But yeah, growing up in Jamaica, we have things that we're passionate about. Football, soccer is one of them for me. And I wanted to watch a game. My team was playing. I wanted to see. So what I orchestrated was to make sure that I got a TV brought to school. And, how can you watch a game and not have a cold refreshment? My refreshment of choice at the time was Red Stripe.
In school?
In school. So I had a TV brought to school and a cooler of Red Stripe. And the games started, or that game that I was interested in started right after lunch. And we had set up, for those who know, the cafeteria set up at Campion is close to Matilda's Corner. Mm-hmm. It's, quite far removed from, the classroom environment. So after lunch, proceeded to set up the TV, have my cooler of beer, and now after lunch, it was brought to, Mrs. Barrett's attention that classes that were 100% occupied prior to lunch were now diminished to about 20% occupancy.
Because everybody was
So
watching
the question now
World Cup.
arose, where are all of these students? Word got back that there was a huge congregation on the upper level of the cafeteria where it was rumored that people are watching World Cup and drinking beer during school time.
I would have had a fit. Carry on.
So Miss Barrett, rallied her troops, which were the prefects, and she, amassed a plan that she was going to drive around to the Matilda's corner side, sneak in her car. She wanted the prefects to block all of the exits and entrances of the cafeteria, right? Because it was going to be a mass exodus. So she executed her plan. Exits were blocked. Everybody scattered like mice, but I was too close to the TV. I was already committed. So there was no running for me. So the prefects got everybody's name that was in attendance. And I sat there still because I was, intent on watching the game. And so I was focused on the TV and the shadow cast behind me. And I heard behind me, she goes, "So, Mr. Sangster, was it worth it?" I said, "Boy, Miss Barrett, give me about 7 more minutes and I'll tell you."
I cannot believe this. You did that?
Yeah, holding a red stripe, watching World Cup.
With a red stripe in your hand.
The red stripe in hand.
You would definitely have been memorable for that.
Yeah, but again, I didn't hurt anybody.
Yes.
Didn't steal anything, didn't break anything. So, I ended up having to erect a wall around the stinking tow tree there, right outside the chemistry lab. So it's there to date, so if anybody in your audience has ever attended or is attending, Campion, when they look at that cut stone wall, they'll know
it's
that
you.
I erected that as a result of my
punishment.
Yeah.
Well, that's an interesting story. You're right. That kind of mischief is years. I mean, in the moment, by the way, it's a tough thing to go through for adults. But years after, you can sit back and laugh at it because, yes, you're right. You didn't hurt anyone.
This is Global Solutions with Naomi Francis. Like, share, and subscribe.
Before I get to Sangster's coffee, which, I see you drinking some coffee right there with us. And you brought, by the way, my own tumbler. Thank you so much. In pink. Very nice of you. But you are also related to, and again, part of Jamaica's political history. Your grandfather was the former Prime Minister of Jamaica, Sir Donald Sangster. Tell us about the history of your family as you remember it.
Sure. So, I'll lead into it with this. So, are a fixture here in Atlanta, and another implant that became a fixture from another country to Atlanta was the Kembe Mutombo. Right?
Yes.
And,
great basketballer.
Yeah. Fun fact about the Kembe was he was mentored by Patrick Ewing, fellow Jamaican. So he had really, really strong ties back to Jamaica, went every year with Patrick. But when Beak and I became friends, I would always, stand up beside him and make a joke because I would put my 2 feet, in line beside his 1 foot, and his 1 foot was bigger than
you, and he's clearly towering over.
So I say all of that because he wore really big shoes.
Yes.
And when you mention, Sir Donald and my father, I look at them as having similar size shoes, much larger than my feet will ever be able to fit into. Yes, I feel very honored to know that my grandfather was not only the second Prime Minister of Jamaica, but the first Minister of Finance. And for those who know or don't know, another fun fact was that, when Sir Donald was Minister of Finance, he wrote the financial transition model for Jamaica out of dependence into independence, which was very well thought out. And so much so that Lee Kuan Yew traveled to Jamaica
Yes.
and sat with my grandfather and took the model that Sir Donald had written for Jamaica and took it back to then create that which we know as Singapore today. So
A big part of that fixture would have been Edward Seaga as well, in because he would have served alongside Seaga. Certainly, Seaga would have been a minister at the time.
no. This was before, you know. So Edward was coming up in the ranks, and that could be a whole nother
Papa
podcast
Eddie,
on its own.
Yes.
Papa Eddie, yeah. I remember being at Belmont Road when he was prime minister, and I remember. Again, we've been immersed in Jamaican politics, since I was born. I grew up through the 70s. I remember, the death threats. I remember, the mass exodus of a lot of our, people that we were going to school with, their families trying to get whatever resources they could and, fled Jamaica. But, what we look back on now and what we are so proud to say, hey, look at where Jamaica is internationally, financially, that is a huge testament to those who stayed back and believed in the country. Because as other people ran, those who stayed back really were the infrastructure that now has laid the groundwork for where we are today. So my dad being one of those,
Bindley Sangster Senior. And he got an Order of Distinction recently from the Jamaican government.
Very proud of him.
Well, congratulations to him.
And just again to tell you, like, the type of character that he is, when he was told that that this was coming, man, if I was able to have captured, just a visual, like his eyes welled up and my father just started to cry. Because my father has never asked for anything other than to serve his country and his people. So to finally be recognized, at the highest level, with such a distinction and such an honor was, a really, punctuation mark on a life that has been nothing but service.
Wow, fantastic. You met Sir Donald as your grandfather.
No, I did
He
not.
died. He died before?
I knew Ferdinand Llewellyn Sangster, fondly known as Pops to me, as my grandfather. So Pops, started, and he was another, amazing story of just Jamaican, just grit. He started Sangster's bookstores, and he started Sangster's bookstores on the back of a bicycle, selling magazines and newspapers downtown Kingston to, the offices, and he would take his bicycle up the stairs of all of those offices in downtown Kingston, because at that time, rubber was such a scarce commodity that they would have stole the rubber off of his, the tires off of his bicycle. So as painstaking as it was, he would go, traipse up the stairs with his suitcase of magazines and newspapers and his bicycle, and he'd go to everyone's desk and, make sure that if it was something that they were interested, if it's not, he would find it for them. He then grew that business from bicycle and suitcase to a newspaper stand, then from a newspaper stand to a brick and mortar bookstore, to the point where he was the largest book supplier in the English-speaking Caribbean, where he had traveled to England and other countries to secure contracts with Penguin, Puffin, Longman, a lot of the key, publishers at the time.
So that's where the entrepreneurial bug started for you, because you are. Let me just sing the praises. By the way, so I've never actually been a coffee connoisseur. Really, love the smell of coffee, but it was just not my cup of tea until. And I will be very, 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 very clear, until I had a cup of the coffee brewed by you. on your farm. And then I started liking other coffee, and then I, explored. But really, coffee is in your blood, your genes, and that you've taken a company such as Sangster's Coffee, a little company from Jamaica, making huge waves, both in Jamaica, the United States, and the rest of the world, as far as Asia and Africa. Am I correct?
You're correct. Well,
Yeah. So tell me about how that bug bit you.
Well, Sangster's Coffee. Yes, I grew up on the farm. Yes, we've been in the coffee game for a long time. But, my father used to sell cherry coffee, unprocessed coffee
Okay.
to co-ops. And he started, my father was a part of the co-op with St. Clair Shirley, Douglas Graham,
Hold on. Foundation people, man.
very foundational.
All right.
My father was instrumental in helping the Japanese establish what then became UCC. So, but again, we were not in the finished product game. We were in the cherries, and then because at that time, all coffee exporting and processing was done primarily by the government, right? So, you had Mavis Bank, which was the largest player. And it's not until years later that the market started to open up to smaller estate type coffees. But my venturing into, the coffee world from the standpoint of a finished product and where we are today literally came out of a need of necessity because.
But you took it a step further. Because you're adding value, which is again a big part of anybody who knows Bindley Sangster recognizes two things: that he gets things done, and that it's not just about getting things done; it's about adding value when you do it.
Value add is critical. But I was in the aviation industry. And as I said, I ran American United and Delta globally for Panasonic.
Yes. And I want to get into that, So we're going to pause the coffee for a second, because this is also a very critical juncture in terms of when you put an exclamation mark on your life.
So
you're among big planes.
Yeah. So again, aviation makes the world really small very quickly. So I there have been times where I've had breakfast on one continent, lunch on one, and dinner on another, all within the span of 24 hours. Aviation, airplanes make the world small real quick. But I was very fortunate. I had an amazing job running the 3 largest airlines in the world for Panasonic. And then lo and behold, COVID came. Being here in Atlanta, that Delta being, the dominant player in the space, they were losing $60 million a day.
Wow.
$60 million a day.
Ooh.
And, there were a lot of programs out there to support businesses, like, the PPP programs and, so there was assistance from the government because we were in an unknown time. And aviation was probably one of the hardest hit industries as a result of COVID.
Listen, places were shut down. The planes were grounded.
Yeah. And being a vendor for the largest 3, my future was unknown, especially in aviation. So I realized that a lot of people were working from home. People still needed coffee. I decided to, get creative, and I used a very good friend of mine in Jamaica, very recognizable last name. His name is Kevin Seaga. And Kevin is a master of his craft, and he helped build the site, which you now know, which is sangsterscoffee.com. Because we realized that people were still going to want quality coffee, but e-commerce was the way to go during COVID because you wanted less forward-facing, less touch, but still have access to the things that you like. So we built sangsterscoffee.com. We went e-commerce. I have another, crazy story was how we got into Dubai and how I built my relationship with Hamed bin Sulayem, of the DMC.
You don't waste the crumbs in life, do you?
we don't have we don't have the opportunity to waste them, right? Because just like the Bible had told you with Joseph, the 7 years of plenty and the 7 years of famine,
Yes.
you never know when the 7 years of famine are coming. So you better be prepared.
Yes.
So if you see a crumb, scrape it up, because you never know when it's going to make a cookie or a loaf of bread, right?
These days, they do it formally and say, well, you know how to pivot.
Well, pivot became such a overused word during COVID, but you had to be resourceful, and you had to, one man's crisis was another man's, opportunity.
Yes.
And Sangsters, even though we were coming to market in 2019, my market entry was the hotel industry in Jamaica. And because I had a friend of mine, she recently passed, but God rest her soul, Suzanne Issa, one of the, with couples. She believed in what I was doing, and she was, kind enough to open up the couples hotel market for me going into the coffee space with a finished product, because we now had Sangster's coffee finished product ready for market. We had targeted low-hanging fruit, the, bring your product right and let it live in Jamaica, right? But then who else got hurt coming out of COVID? Were the hotels, right? Because if you can't get to the country, if you remember how we had quarantine and, restricted travel. So I was just starting to gain traction in the hotel space. And then COVID came.
Boom.
So now I had all of this product in all of these different hotels, and the product wasn't moving. They weren't paying, for the coffee because they didn't have any guests. You can't get, blood from a stone. Can't ask them to pay pay for the coffee when it's one, not selling, and two, they don't have any guests. So that's how it forced me into e-commerce. And
You think on your feet very well.
again, you have to move, and I think that's one of the things that afforded us the success that we have today, is where, I'm not overwhelmed with shareholders and partners and people who've invested. It's like where you literally, if you wake up in the morning and it makes sense, you execute. And I am very fortunate because my wife, Missy, has been very, just been my, rock. She has supported everything that I've done. She'll still pull me back, from time to time, because we like to call it the balloon and weight, relationship, where, I get all excited and she brings
you back to reality, that's for sure.
But, she'll let me play in my happy place for a while until, she's like, psst.
That's the sign of a good wife.
No, I've got an amazing wife.
We're running out of time. I want to ask you just a few questions. Finish the sentence. Bindley Sangster is?
Bindley Sangster is a good father, a good friend, a follower of Christ, and hopefully that the day that I leave, people will remember me not for, the good cup of coffee that I made, or the airplane that I fixed, or the car that I drive, but for something that I've done out of kindness for them.
What's your favorite saying to your children and to your friends?
Who's holding your ladder?
Who's holding your ladder? Good. There are a couple that I've heard from you that I'm going to drop to you. Never push a door that says,
Pull.
There you go. And never be car rich and
money poor.
When you said that, I'm like, all right, okay, I got you. You can't be car rich and cash poor at all, man.
No. Focus on the things that, that are important, right? Having a fancy car or having a fancy anything, isn't it? What's inside is more important. I just got told something. I was sitting with a friend of mine, and, he's supports a lot of political players. And he had this newly appointed elected congressman come to him and sat with him before he took office. And he goes, man, I'm so, I just wanted to come and talk to you. And he goes, let me ask you a question. what's so different? What's exciting? He goes, everybody wants to come and take a picture with me. And, it's like, and he goes, okay. He goes, let me ask you a question. Have you been to Disney World? He goes, yeah, we actually went 2 weeks ago as a celebration. He goes, did you ever take a picture with Mickey Mouse? And he goes, of course we took a picture with Mickey Mouse. He goes, do you know who was inside the suit? He goes, and he immediately got it. It's not about the title, right? You didn't know who was inside that Mickey Mouse suit. They're not taking pictures with that person, Tom, John, Paul. They're taking it with the position. That position won't ever last, but who you are will last.
Man.
Let that be who people want to take pictures with.
Man. Thank you for that. And that, therefore, is part of your success story, that you see the human behind everything and that you are led by your belief and grounded in your Christian faith. What's your favorite verse that you will leave with everybody as we close?
I want to tell you, it's, and boy, you put me on the spot, but I can look it up real quick. I think it's Matthew 10:32. Acknowledge me amongst men and I will acknowledge you amongst the Father, right? So
And you've said it several times.
yeah, but don't be ashamed of your faith,
Yes.
because you never know who needs it. You never know when. And you've heard some of my stories, and like, I can't deny that God and Christ are real because of everything that I've been through. But that to me, in Matthew, when, acknowledge me amongst men and I will acknowledge you amongst the Father.
Man, Bindley, thank you so much. Lovely night, cook food. Really and truly, you've been a tower of strength, but also you are just a fantastic human being to watch, move, and rise and learn from, really. So I want to thank you for gracing the podcast today and for just being a great supporter. I wish you all the best. Listen, there is nothing in this world that I think you cannot do. And if you think you have, met some amount of success, which you have, I wish you greater and greater and greater and greater success.
Well, to him be the glory, and I wish it for you as well.
Thank you, my friend. Really appreciate it. So that's our first podcast success stories. We're focused on just making sure that you understand, how people's various formula really for success is, and how you can apply some of those to ensuring that you too become as successful as you can be. Join us again for another in our series of podcasts.
This is Global Solutions with Naomi Francis. Like, share, and subscribe.